My name is Olivia Hart. I'm 28 years old. And for most of my adult life, I wasn't treated like a daughter, a sister, or even a human being. I was treated like a bank account. The strange thing was that I didn't realize it at first. When manipulation happens slowly enough, it starts to feel normal. Growing up, my younger sister, Sophia Hart, had a gift. Not for art, not for business, not for anything useful. She had a gift for creating emergencies. A broken phone became a catastrophe. An overdue bill became a tragedy. A bad decision became someone else's responsibility, usually mine. The moment Sophia started crying, my mother would immediately become her defense attorney. Olivia, your sister is struggling. Olivia, she really needs help. Olivia, family takes care of family. Then, my father would arrive with his favorite speech. You're successful now. You have responsibilities. Funny how those responsibilities only flowed in one direction. Never toward me. Always toward Sophia. By the time I graduated college and landed a solid operations management job for a logistics company in Phoenix, I had become the family solution to everything: security deposits, car repairs, credit card debt, medical emergencies, rent, vacation disasters disguised as emergencies. Every crisis somehow ended with my debit card. The difference was that, unlike my family, I actually paid attention. Every time someone borrowed money, I created paperwork, simple loan agreements, names, amounts, signature, repayment terms. At first they laughed. Sophia once rolled her eyes and said, "You're so dramatic." But she signed anyway. They all did. Because people tend to sign anything when they're convinced they'll never have to honor it. Over the next 2 years, the loans piled up. Sophia borrowed money for rent after quitting her job, money for credit card debt, money for unexpected expenses, money for opportunities that never seemed to materialize. My parents borrowed money too. Dad needed help with home repairs. Mom needed help with medical expenses. Every request sounded urgent. Every story sounded heartbreaking. Every promise sounded sincere. And every promise was broken. Not a single payment ever arrived. Not one. The turning point came when I met Ethan Brooks. Ethan worked in legal compliance and had an annoying habit of noticing things other people ignored. We'd been dating for 8 months when he finally witnessed one of Sophia's performances in real time. It happened during dinner. My phone rang. "Sophia." "Again," I answered. Instant sobbing. "Olivia." I don't know what to do. I closed my eyes. What happened now? "My cat needs emergency treatment." Ethan quietly raised an eyebrow. "How much?" $2,000. I nearly choked on my drink. After the call ended, Ethan opened Instagram. Then he turned his phone toward me. Sophia had posted a story 3 hours earlier. She was showing off luxury nail accessories she'd bought for the same cat. The total price, nearly $200. Ethan stared at me. "Do you know what this is?" "Isahil." "My sister being irresponsible." "No." His voice was calm. "It's financial abuse." The words landed harder than I expected. Because he wasn't angry, he wasn't emotional. He was simply stating a fact. That night he helped me review every loan. The deeper we looked, the uglier the truth became. The rent money, weekend trips, emergency repairs, designer handbags, medical expenses, cosmetic procedures, business opportunities, luxury shopping sprees. Every discovery felt like another crack forming inside me. The hardest part wasn't realizing they'd lied. It was realizing they'd never expected to get caught. A few days before my birthday, Sophia called again. This time her voice was full of excitement, not panic. "Excitement, Olivia. I have an incredible opportunity." I already knew I was going to regret the conversation. She claimed a friend was launching a boutique business. She needed $4,000 immediately. According to Sophia, this investment would change her life. She'd finally become financially independent. She'd finally repay everyone. She'd finally grow up. I'd heard versions of that speech before. Still, I told her I'd think about it. That evening, Ethan and I sat together reviewing documents. When he saw the new request, he didn't laugh. He opened his laptop. For 3 hours he drafted the most intimidating loan agreement I'd ever seen. Default clauses, penalty provisions, acceleration terms, personal guarantees. Everything. When he finished, he slid the document across the table. "If she wants money," he said quietly, "she can borrow it like an adult." I should have known the universe was preparing one final lesson, because when Sophia arrived to sign the paperwork, she didn't come alone. She brought our parents and a grocery store birthday cake. The scene would have been funny if it hadn't perfectly summarized my entire relationship with my family. There I was, standing in my apartment kitchen on my 28th birthday. A cheap cake sat on the counter. My mother was lighting candles. My father was singing off-key. And my sister was signing paperwork to borrow another $4,000 from me, even while celebrating my birthday. The attention somehow belonged to Sophia. "As usual, make a wish," Mom said cheerfully. I looked at the candles, then at the freshly signed contract, then at Sophia for a brief second. I almost laughed, because I already knew my wish. I wanted my family to stop treating me like an ATM. Unfortunately, wishes don't fix people. After they left, Ethan and I got to work. What started as a simple review turned into a full investigation. We spread documents across the dining table. Loan agreements, bank transfers, text messages, screenshots, social media posts, receipts. By midnight, the picture was impossible to ignore. Sophia alone had borrowed over $18,000. My parents owed another $11,000. Several extended relatives owed smaller amounts. And not one person had made a meaningful payment. Not one. The next morning, Ethan looked at me over his coffee. "What would happen if you simply asked for your money back?" I didn't hesitate. World War III. Then maybe it's time. The words stayed with me all day. For years, I'd avoided confrontation because I wanted peace. But there wasn't any peace. There was only compliance, and the moment I stopped complying, I was about to discover who my family really was. 3 weeks after Sophia signed the newest loan agreement, I called her. The conversation started calmly. It lasted less than 30 seconds. "Hey, Sophia. Hey, Liu. I need the 4,000 back." Silence. Then laughter. Actual laughter. "I thought you were serious." "I am." Another pause. "Wait. You're actually demanding repayment. The agreement says payment can be requested at any time." "Olivia, nobody thought you meant that." The statement hit harder than I expected. Nobody thought you meant that. Not because they forgot. Not because they misunderstood. Because they never believed consequences existed. You signed it. It was paperwork. It was a contract. Same thing. "No. Sophia. It isn't." Her voice instantly changed. The sweetness vanished. Now she sounded irritated. "Why are you acting weird lately?" Weird. That word again. Not angry. Not unfair. Weird. Because enforcing boundaries looked strange to people who benefited from having none. "You owe me $18,000. I didn't realize you were keeping score." The sentence made my stomach turn. Keeping score. As if documented debt were some petty game. "I'm asking for one payment." "Fine," she snapped. "I'll talk to Mum." Then she hung up. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "Mum? Right on schedule. Olivia." "Honey? Sophia is crying." I closed my eyes. Of course she was. "What happened?" "She says you're demanding money." "I'm requesting repayment according to a signed agreement." "You know she doesn't have that kind of money. She had enough money for a luxury resort last weekend." Mom immediately changed subjects. "That's different." "No. It isn't." She needed a break. "With my money, you're being very harsh." The conversation went exactly where every conversation always went. Not accountability. Not responsibility. Not honesty. Only guilt. Always guilt. By evening, Dad joined the attack. Then the group messages started. "Sophia, I guess I know where I stand now." "Mom, I never thought my daughter would become so cold." "Dad, family should come before money." I stared at the messages, while Ethan sat beside me. After reading them, he slowly put down his phone. They're not discussing repayment. I know. They're discussing your obedience. That sentence changed everything. Because he was right. The money wasn't the real issue. Control was. For years they had trained me to respond automatically. Request. Guilt. Payment. Repeat. The moment the cycle broke, panic set in. That weekend, Ethan and I completed the full financial audit. The results were staggering. Original loans, 32美元. Ling ling ling. Interest. Lot of fees. Default penalties. Additional contractual charges. Total balance. 47美元. Ling ling ling. I stared at the spreadsheet. $47,000. Enough for a down payment on a house. Enough to completely change someone's life. And I'd handed it over one emotional manipulation at a time. What now, I asked. Ethan handed me a folder. Now we stop asking. Inside was a formal demand package. Every contract, every payment history, every missed obligation, every calculation, everything organized with military precision. For the first time, my family wasn't dealing with emotional Olivia. They were dealing with documented facts. Monday morning, I mailed certified demand letters. One to Sophia, one to my parents, one to every relative who owed money. 30 days. Pay or respond. Otherwise, legal action would begin. The explosion arrived less than 24 hours later. Calls, texts, voicemails, emails, dozens of them. I ignored every single one. Then Wednesday happened. Sophia showed up outside my workplace. I spotted her waiting beside my car. The moment she saw me, she marched forward. What is wrong with you? Her voice echoed across the parking lot. Coworkers glanced over. She didn't care. You sent legal letters. You owe me money. We're family. No. We're debtors and creditors. The words stunned even me. For a moment, I saw genuine shock on her face, as though she'd never imagined I could speak to her that way. Then her eyes filled with tears. The performance began. You don't love me anymore. I almost believed it. Not because it was true, because she'd spent years training me to feel guilty whenever she cried. But something inside me had changed. I do love you. She looked hopeful. Then I continued. But love isn't supposed to cost $47,000. Her expression collapsed. I walked away. By Sunday, my parents demanded a family meeting. Everyone would be there. Mom, Dad, Sophia, several relatives. They wanted to fix things. Ethan immediately recognized the trap. Don't go alone. I have to. Then record everything. When I arrived, the atmosphere felt wrong immediately. Everyone was already seated, waiting, watching, like judges preparing a verdict. And somehow, despite being the person owed $47,000, I was treated like the criminal. Dad pointed toward an empty chair. Sit down. I remained standing. The war was finally beginning. The moment I stepped into my parents' living room, I knew this wasn't a family meeting. It was a trial, and I was the accused. Mom sat on the couch beside Dad. Sophia occupied the armchair. Uncle Kevin leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. Even two cousins who owed me money had somehow appeared. The entire room looked like a committee assembled to explain why I was wrong for wanting my own money back. Dad pointed toward a chair. Sit. I stayed standing. No. His jaw tightened. What do you mean, no? I mean, I'm not here to be lectured. Mom immediately jumped in. Olivia. Sweetheart. We're trying to save this family. The irony almost made me laugh. Save this family. After taking $47,000 from me, after years of manipulation, after endless lies, they wanted to save the family. I pulled out my phone. The room instantly became tense. What are you doing? Sophia asked. Recording. Dad stood up. Absolutely not. Why? Because this is private. No. I replied calmly. This is a legal discussion, involving $47,000. The room went silent. Uncle Kevin finally spoke. You've become arrogant. I looked at him. Because I want my money back. Because you think you're better than everyone. That accusation wasn't new. Every successful person in my family, eventually became a target. The moment you stopped sacrificing for everyone else, you became selfish. The moment you set boundaries, you became arrogant. The moment you demanded accountability, you became cruel. I was simply the latest example. Dad slammed his hand on the coffee table. Your grandfather built this family on loyalty. I met his eyes. My grandfather didn't get scammed out of $47,000. Mom looked genuinely offended. Scammed? Yes. Sophia gasped dramatically. I can't believe you'd say that. Then explain the vacations. Silence. The designer handbags. Silence. The luxury restaurants. Silence. The fake emergencies. Sophia's face turned red. Dad immediately rushed to her defense. Nobody's perfect. Nobody accidentally borrows $18,000 and repays zero. The room erupted. Everyone talking at once. Everyone defending Sophia. Everyone attacking me. Nobody discussing repayment. Not one person. And that's when I finally understood something. The debt didn't matter to them. Only access mattered. Access to my money. Access to my guilt. Access to my obedience. Without those things, I was no longer useful. Dad eventually raised his hand. The room quieted. Then he delivered the ultimatum. You're going to withdraw those letters. I stared at him. No. You'll forgive the loans. No. You'll apologize to your sister. No. Mom looked horrified. Sophia started crying. Dad's face turned purple. Then, he said the words I'd secretly expected for years. If you continue this, you're no longer part of this family. The room became completely silent. Everyone waited. They expected me to panic, to back down, to beg, to surrender, the same way I always had. Instead, I calmly gathered my papers. Then I guess we're done. Mom stood up. Olivia. I looked at her. For a brief second, I saw genuine confusion. As if she couldn't understand why her usual tactics weren't working. As if the machine had suddenly stopped responding to commands. You'd choose money over family. I shook my head. No. Then I pointed at Sophia. She did. Nobody had a response. I walked out. For the first time in my life, I didn't look back. The next morning, I called attorney David Whitman. Ethan had recommended him after speaking with several legal contacts. After reviewing the documentation, David was quiet for nearly a minute. Finally, he spoke. Olivia, how much evidence do you actually have? Everything. Everything. Contracts. Transfers. Text message. Social media posts. Signed agreements. Another pause. Then he laughed. Not because it was funny. Because he couldn't believe how thoroughly I documented everything. This is one of the strongest debt collection cases I've seen. For the first time, a hope appeared. Not emotional hope. Legal hope. The kind supported by facts. Within 48 hours, David filed the first lawsuits. Small claims actions against Sophia, Uncle Kevin, and several relatives. The paperwork was served that Thursday. The reaction was immediate. My phone exploded. Calls, threats, voicemails, angry messages. Sophia posted a dramatic social media essay describing how her own sister was destroying the family over money. Hundreds of comments appeared. People who knew nothing about the situation rushed to support her. Victimhood had always been her superpower. But this time something unexpected happened. Ethan responded. Not emotionally. Not aggressively. With facts. One comment. Simple. Direct. Sophia borrowed over $22,000, and has never made a single payment. Within an hour, Sophia deleted the entire post. The damage had already been done. For the first time, people started asking questions. Questions she couldn't answer. 3 days later, things became darker. I received a call from Human Resources. Someone had filed an anonymous complaint. The report accused me of using company resources to harass family members. The allegations were completely fabricated. Fortunately, I had records proving every legal action happened outside work. HR dismissed the complaint, but I knew exactly what had happened. Someone was trying to hurt my career, and there weren't many suspects. David immediately advised me to document everything. They're escalating. He was right, because the following night, I came home to find my apartment door unlocked. Nothing appeared stolen, but things had been moved. Drawers open, files shifted, cabinets disturbed. Someone had been searching. My stomach dropped. I called the police immediately, while officers were taking statements. My elderly neighbor approached. I thought it was strange. She said, "What's that? I saw Sophia and Kevin here earlier." The blood drained from my face. What? They said they were dropping something off. The officers exchanged looks. I suddenly remembered something. 2 years earlier, I'd given Sophia a spare key. I'd never gotten it back. David was furious when he heard they're tampering with evidence. The next morning he filed emergency motions. Then, things got even worse. I walked outside and found all 4 tires on my SUV slashed. Every single one. The message couldn't have been clearer. Back down, or else. When Ethan arrived, he stared at the damage in disbelief. This is insane. For the first time since everything began, I felt fear. Not for the money. Not for the lawsuit. For my safety. For Ethan's safety. For what desperate people might do when they realize consequences were finally catching up to them. And unfortunately, the worst was still coming. The fear didn't last long. Anger replaced it. Cold, focused anger. For years, I'd been afraid of upsetting my family. Now, they were breaking into my apartment, sabotaging my property, and trying to destroy my career because I dared to ask for repayment. The illusion was gone. These weren't loving relatives making mistakes. These were people who had built their lives around exploiting me, and they were panicking because the free ride was ending. The police documented the vandalism. David immediately amended the lawsuits. The debt collection cases were no longer just about unpaid loans. Now there was harassment, intimidation, property damage, possible evidence tampering. The consequences were multiplying. Fast? That same afternoon, Sophia called. For the first time in weeks, she sounded genuinely frightened. "Olivia, we need to talk. We can talk through attorneys." "No. Please." I leaned against my kitchen counter. "What do you want? This has gone too far." I almost laughed. Too far. Not when they took my money. Not when they lied. Not when they manipulated me for years. Only now, when consequences appeared. What exactly has gone too far? Sophia. A long pause. Then she whispered, "Kevin is losing control." That got my attention. What does that mean? He keeps talking about teaching you a lesson. My expression hardened. If he threatens me or Ethan again, I will pursue every legal option available. I know. For the first time, she sounded small. Not manipulative. Not dramatic. Small. The realization had finally arrived. Actions had consequences. And those consequences were expensive. A few days later, David called. "I've scheduled settlement discussions." All ready. They're scared. That didn't surprise me. The evidence was overwhelming. Signed agreements, financial records, bank transfers, text message, social media posts proving misuse of funds, years of documentation. The truth had become impossible to deny. Sophia arrived at David's office, looking exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes. No designer handbag. No attitude. No performance. Just fear. David spent nearly an hour explaining her legal exposure, civil judgments, interest, penalties, fraud allegations, potential criminal referrals. The more he spoke, the paler she became. Finally, she looked at me. "What do you want?" The answer was simple. "What you've always owed. Nothing more, nothing less." After several hours of negotiations, she signed. Full repayment. $24,000. Monthly installments. Strict deadlines. Default provisions. The same type of accountability she'd spent years avoiding. When the meeting ended, she looked at me. "Do you hate me?" I considered the question carefully, then answered honestly, "No." That surprised her. "I hate what you did." Tears filled her eyes. But for once, they changed nothing. 2 days later, my parents arrived for their own settlement meeting. Unlike Sophia, they brought a lawyer, a family friend, He reviewed the evidence, reviewed the contracts, reviewed the payment history. Then, quietly turned to my parents. You need to settle. Dad looked stunned. What? You signed legally enforceable agreements. We're her parents. The attorney sighed. And she's your creditor. For the first time, someone outside the family wasn't playing by their rules. Reality entered the room. Mom finally looked at me. Not with anger, not with guilt, just exhaustion. What do you want from us? Olivia. The answer hadn't changed. The truth? Silence. Then, and repayment. They signed monthly payments, interest included, legal fees included, no arguments left, no manipulation left, just obligations. Uncle Kevin refused. Predictably, he decided to fight. That turned out to be the worst decision of his life. The recordings, the threats, the witness statements, the break-in investigation, the tire vandalism, everything came together. The court wasn't impressed. He lost. Badly. Financial penalties, restraining orders, asset seizure, his truck, his tools, part of his savings, gone. Watching the judgment wasn't satisfying. It was sad. A grown man had destroyed his own future because he couldn't accept accountability. By Christmas, settlement agreements covered the entire family. More than $50,000 would be repaid over the next 2 years, but the money wasn't the biggest victory. The silence was. No emergency calls, no midnight crises, no manipulative message, no guilt trips, no emotional blackmail. My phone finally became quiet. For the first time in years, peace entered my life. 6 months later, Ethan and I moved to Flagstaff. New house, new careers, new beginning. The distance felt healthy, necessary, healing. 1 year after the settlements began, Ethan proposed during a sunset hike overlooking the mountains. I said yes before he finished asking. It was the easiest decision I'd made in years. We started planning a wedding. A small wedding. A peaceful wedding. A wedding built around people who actually loved us. Not people who viewed love as a financial transaction. Almost 2 years after the lawsuit started, my phone rang one evening. Sophia. I nearly ignored it. Curiosity won. Hello? Her voice was nervous. Olivia. What is it? A pause. Then, I'm getting married. I wasn't expecting that. Congratulations. Thank you. Another pause. Longer this time? Then she finally said it. I was hoping you'd walk me down the aisle. The audacity nearly took my breath away. Years of lies. Years of manipulation. Years of theft. And now she wanted a symbolic family moment. As though none of it had happened. As though trust could simply be restored because enough time had passed. I stared out across the pine trees surrounding our property. Then I answered, no. She started crying. The old version of me would have folded, would have felt guilty, would have sacrificed her own peace to keep someone else comfortable. But that version no longer existed. Olivia. I've changed. I hope you have. I mean it. I know. Then why won't you come? Because some things can be forgiven without being restored. Because healing doesn't require reconciliation. Because boundaries matter. Most importantly, because consequences matter. You'll always be my sister by blood. I said quietly, but you stopped being family when you decided my love was something you could exploit. The silence on the other end told me she finally understood. Not agreed. Understood. There was a difference. I ended the call. Ethan stepped onto the deck, carrying 2 glasses of wine. Everything okay? I smiled. The kind of smile that only comes after surviving something that once seemed impossible. Yeah. He handed me a glass. What happened? I looked toward the sunset, toward the future, toward the life we'd built without manipulation, guilt, or debt. Then I answered, nothing happened. And for the first time in a very long time, that was the truth.